Dawson's Rambles.
Hey YouTube, Dawson Ryder here. It's finally here, our trailer for Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Once and Always, so we get to finally talk about that and break down everything. I say finally here, but I have to note here at the beginning, I feel like this came out pretty much around the time I was expecting. It was supposedly supposed to come out within the week, but it leaked early last night, and now they've officially put it up. But I feel like the fandom complainers just started way too early. I don't think we're going to go balls out on promotion, but I feel like this is generally what I was expecting, and I think people jumped the gun on being like, doom and gloom about it. But anyway, let's go ahead and actually talk about the trailer. A lot of this seems very different from the breakdown I had the other day of the supposed plot leaks. There are a couple things that may align similarly, but I don't know, we'll see. I feel like a lot of that's been debunked, or maybe that was somehow just aspects of it from an early version. I don't know. But so, we start off and we see this sort of conflict, a lot about that scene from the early previews with the 6 Rangers fighting some putties, it looks like. And it looks like this is going to set up the context for the beginning, where we're going to have the 6 Rangers fighting Rita, who somehow returned. Somehow Rita's returned. Dark science robotics. Secrets only Aruto knows. But anyway, that looks like it's going to be the beginning, is Rita and the putties fighting the Rangers. And from what it seems like that they're leading you to believe, is that it looks like Billy's about to get blasted by Rita, and Trini saves him, and that's when she dies, is at the very beginning. This could be some trailer misleading stuff. I mean, this generally seems to be what happens, but there could be some different things that are misleading. I don't think PR is the caliber of thing to do that big of a mislead like trailers will do. But that's what it seems like is going to happen, is that Trini dies in the beginning. You see Billy and Zach are the only ones that take off their helmet in the beginning. So I'm going to actually presume that in this scene, we've been wondering who the Green Ranger is. Is this a flashback? Does Adam get the coin? Some people are like, is Matt's not going to be in it. Stuff like that. I think that this implies to me that in this scene, the characters here are meant to be Jason, Kimberly, and Tommy. I forget his name. But I think that's implying that those are those 3 characters, because we also see another snapshot of when Rita is taking off with the machine. You see their little figures, because we know the plot is she's turning the Rangers into figures. So I'm going to assume that after this happens, maybe immediately after, the 3 Rangers get turned into the little figures and she flies off. Probably, maybe they're distracted by Trini, dying, and she turns the other 3 into figures, and that takes them off the board. So, not a flashback or anything. And I feel like on one way this might explain, like, yeah, that's why the Pink Ranger is shorter, which people have been making a big deal about, that she's shorter. Like, it's not going to line up with Kat's height. And so, like, that's Kim, so it's meant to be shorter. I can't tell from the later shots whether the height of the Pink Ranger suit actress is more aligned with Kat. I'm going to be honest, I don't give a shit. I just don't. I don't care. I mean, yeah, it would be better if they lined that stuff up, but it's just so unimportant. But anyway, that's what it seems like happens, because then we immediately go to Billy and Zach talking to Min, and she says, probably the biggest shocker in Power Rangers history, she says, they killed Mom, they killed her. She said the word killed, and I think they used the word killed twice. Like, that's like a big deal for Power Rangers. It's a really funny thing. Like, I always thought it was stupid they don't use the word, not in the sense that I'm like, they need to be serious for adults, but it's just like, stupid that they avoid it. I've seen kid shows that I feel that I would imagine are aimed for an even younger audience than Power Rangers use the word killed or death, and I've always thought it was one of the stupidest things. So it's kind of crazy, and it kind of gives you like almost a pearl clutching moment, because it's funny when I do see other kid shows use that word, I'm almost scandalized because PR has trained me that you can't use those words in kid shows, which, I don't know, it's kind of a funny big deal. We get, again, our first look at Min there. So far, very brief scenes, but I like what I've seen so far. She seems to be doing a pretty good job with the role. Again, just a few scenes, but I like what we see in the trailer. We have a scene of her looking over a picture of her mom, and it looks like a little drawing that you would assume that she made for her mother, but I think Trini actually drew that. Big fan theory there. No. Clearly wants to be involved, but Zach's like, no, this is Ranger business. Like, you should have said this is peace conference business. Imagine if, like, they were trying, like, Min was younger, and they were trying to, like, explain the concept of death to her, and they're like, well, sweetie, your mother's gone to the big peace conference in the sky. But then it seems like we set up the idea that, since the other 3 Rangers are kidnapped, that's why we're bringing in the B team, Rocky and Kat. We see a shot of the command center, which we've seen in all of the behind-the-scenes stuff. We actually see an exterior of the revived command center. This is something that does sort of line up with those leaks in the sense that I didn't know this was necessarily going to be the command center. I honestly thought it was going to be a part of SPD, SPA, but it's like a new version of the command center with Alpha there. We get a look at Alpha again. His voice sounds very similar. Honestly, it's a little bit different. It kind of reminds me of when he was glitching out and he was like, Power Rangers, but it sounds pretty close. Also, Rita, obviously the same voice. Sounds really close. But yeah, we look at the command center, and he pulls up this program called Project Pandora, stupid little Sendai reference, and you got like the little, on the side, her staff, But it shows like all these different names of these locations and places from Power Rangers. You got Astro Megaship, Reefside in there. I'll put up the screenshots of what I got, but there's a couple ones that are shown. And I think this is kind of like a ranger network that's able to contact different rangers, which I think is really cool. I think that's a really neat lore beat. And apparently someone also saw a little thing in the corner of the command center that said Cranston Industries, which is kind of neat. But anyway, I think that's cool. I think there's going to be some hopeful, cool lore setup in there with that. But then with that, they summon Kat and Rocky there. Rocky looks to be holding something. It looks like some people have said like a fireman's cap and some Chinese food. Nicholas, Chinese food for lunch. Random New Girl reference. I just wanted to say what that reference was because it sounded weird. Anyway, it's really funny because, like, classic Rocky, but like, oh, he's a fireman, but also he's eating Chinese food. And it shows Alpha handing them over the coins, and that's why we get this team lineup. I feel that there's some questions there about, like, if Jason and Kim had their coins when they got truncated, how did they get the coins? Maybe that'll be explained. Maybe they're just mass printing coins at this new command center. I like the way that's kind of handled, where you have like the OGs out there at the beginning, and then a couple of them get taken down by this threat, and they got to call in these other Rangers. And it's not just like, oh, we're calling in Rangers from random season. It's like connects to the mmpr replacement aspect. And then it's actually Zach leading the It's Morphin Time, which was cool and unexpected just because it seemed like Billy was going to be the leader. I kind of hope that multiple of the characters get to lead the It's Morphin Time in this, assuming they morph multiple times, but that was neat to see. And then when they're at the command center too, we have a shot of them briefly talking to Adam and Aisha, who I think will probably be in the special a little bit more. I'm going to be honest, that shot did not look the greatest. It looked really cheap. Like it looked like they were in Spy Kids 3D, or it reminded me of the scene in How I Met Your Mother when they find out Robin was in that kid show and they're like, let us sing you a song about our beavers. We get like the 4 Rangers going out into battle, and we see some civilian fight scenes of the Rangers saving some people, which looks to be like one of the first fight scenes after this happens. Rocky has a couple lines. Sounds a little awkward, kind of like in Dimensions in Danger. I don't know, something about his voiceover sounded awkward. On the flip side, from the brief few scenes we see of Billy in this trailer, I think he feels like Billy. Like the voice sounds the same. I mean, obviously it's the same voice, but people's voices changes when they get older. So Rocky's sounds a little bit weird, but Billy, we don't hear a lot. We do hear some under the helmet, but he sounds like Billy. Like it fits. It's seamless for me. Same thing with Zach. Seamless. Zach actually probably is my favorite part of this trailer. A lot of just charisma, really likable in this. Speaking of, we get a scene at the juice bar. Just the very corner of the juice bar of Ernie's, and it looks really good. Actually, it looks like the best set, to be honest. Rita's new palace thing looks pretty decent. I'm going to be honest, like, not being overly critical, the new command center looks a little cheapo. Like, except for the Christmas lights in the background, some aspects of the original command center, despite the smallness of it, look better. Like, this looks cheaper. But the command center looks like command center. That's the real name of the juice bar. But the juice bar looks like a great recreation. The putties are clearly attacking it just for nostalgia reasons, but it was a cool scene, and Zach's like, it was the wrong move to attack this place. There's also several scenes of them fighting in their civilian forms. Looks like they're doing some of their own stunts, which is rather neat. Also intermingled with this is like a breakdown, but I'm kind of going out of order. But they do talk about what Rita's plan is, and they say that Rita says, I'm going to go back in time before Zordon recruited you as Rangers, which is interesting. I'm curious how her kidnapping Rangers and turning them into these figures is going to tie into that. Like, if she goes and changes time, there's really no need to collect Rangers. Although I guess it gets them off the board from stopping her. But I'm curious if there's going to somehow interconnect. Maybe when she leaves, she has this machine with her that's turning them into the figures. But they also show something similar when she's showing going through time, and they show the dumpster. Maybe the machine's being powered by it. I don't know. But that's her plan. And we see a couple shots of her in her command center and talking about the plan. But that seems to be what's going to happen, which is rather interesting. I'm going to be curious to see what happens with that. We also see the Rangers encounter robo versions of a couple monsters. One of them is Snizard, which is really funny because Snizard, I guess, was the monster voiced by Bryan Cranston. But what's funny about Snizard is that when they announced his figure, because I don't care about Monsters of the Week, I just don't. I remember a couple of them from back in the day, like Pudgy Pig and stuff, because of their memorable episodes, but I never cared about Monsters of the Week in any season, so I don't remember a lot of them. And so it's funny when they announced Snizard, for the Lightning Collection, I'm like, who the hell is this guy? And everyone's like, oh, it's the guy that Bryan Cranston voiced. So it's funny in the trailer, when I saw this, I'm like, oh, they look like they're probably recreations of MPR monsters, but I didn't recognize Snizard, and then I saw someone say it's Snizard, so it's just funny that this dude keeps coming up, and I keep forgetting who he is. Kind of like how I can't remember anyone's name in real life. Seriously, like they introduce themselves, and I'm like, oh, I already forgot it. The only other thing I can think is this worth noting specifically is at the very end of the trailer, we do see a Zord sequence, a CGI Zord sequence, which is worth noting for two reasons. Like, obviously, it's CGI, they're not using a practical suit or obviously not trying to use footage. That would be awkward. Although admittedly it would be funny if they just randomly cut to some old G-Ranger footage. In fact, to make this a true anniversary tribute, what they should do is actually try to repurpose old Megazord footage from the OG show, but what they should do is cut to some footage of Daijujin, but then when it punches, it's a Thunder Megazord. That would truly be a tribute. But point is we're getting some new Zord footage from this. I feel like there's going to be criticisms for the way it looks. I'm going to get into that, just a small segment at the end about some criticisms about the way it looks overall. I think it overall looks decent-ish for what it is. It looks better than some of the Sentai CGI, to be honest. And I just like the idea that they wanted to do a Megazord fight and they just did it. And obviously, again, they don't have to rely on or think about like, well, we don't have any Sentai footage for it. Like, no, just make your own show. That's how regular shows work. So, I don't know. Also, something that's interesting about it is it looks like it's basing its look, I mean, obviously it's basing its look off the Megazord, but it's basing its specific look off of the Zap Megazord. You can't tell so much in the shot of the Megazord, which I have to say, even though it's like that CG look, I think the last shot of the Megazord looks pretty cool, especially pulling up the sword for the lightning. But when you can't really tell so much in that shot, but you can tell with the individual Zords, especially the T-Rex, because the T-Rex has a very distinct look, especially when you compare it to the way the original one looks. It's a little bit more of a slender look because they based it off of like original sketches or something, or prototype design, not prototype, whatever, concept sketches. And like you can especially tell, I recently reviewed the Super 7 T-Rex, which looks extremely accurate to the suit from the original footage, and then the Zap one looks distinctly different. I actually think that's kind of cool, because obviously they're going to have to say that the Zords were revived somehow, because this isn't just something that was kind of like not explained or left up in the air. Like that was a big storyline, the fact that the Zords were destroyed, and then I think weren't pieces of them used to reconstruct the Thunder Zords in the story, but regardless, them were destroyed, and that was like a big plot point, so they're probably going to bring up that those were revived. And I like the idea that they're slightly altered, and lining up with the Zap is kind of cool. Someone could maybe be like cynical and be like, oh, it's product, But I like the way that integrates. In a way, it kind of reminds me of the comic having the metallic forms show up early when the figures came out, or using Andros' stealth form. I like stuff like that. It lines it up and it gives this cool synergy, and it kind of gives me this extra like attachment to my Zap Zord. I'm like, hey, it represents the anniversary special. But that's pretty much it I can think of for like the content of the trailer. There is some cool music in the trailer. Like the beginning has some just kind of good classic trailer exciting music, but then like the tail end you get like an mmpr instrumental, which sounds really good and just amps up the nostalgia. I'm sure it's going to remind some people from other parts of the franchise, but for me it actually oddly enough reminded me of the instrumental Hyperforce theme that would play at the end credits of the episodes. But it sounded good, and like between stuff like the juice bar and seeing the old Rangers and the music, it definitely tugs at those nostalgia strings and makes you excited for it. And I'll say overall, I'm still excited for this thing. A lot about it doesn't seem to line up with the explanations from that leak the other day, but stuff about like Trini dying in the special, Zordon's tube is there in the background. I'm not going to rule out some of it maybe being true. Maybe accidentally. Maybe those were all fake and some of it is accidental. I still think there's going to be some ties to Cosmic Fury. I feel like they have to mention Zed in this, but a lot of the place setting from that leak seems to be debunked. And I think Simon Bennett even commented on it too, but we'll see. I think that some things might accidentally line up, but we're not going to dwell on that. Just talking about this trailer. Again, I'm excited. I think this looks good. I think that there's been some complaints I've seen about the way it looks and like looking cheap. I have mixed thoughts on that. I mean, it does. PR Toku always looks cheap. For this in particular, I think that it's kind of hit and miss. Like some shots look cheaper, some sets look cheaper, some look really good. Honestly, for the most part in the context of this special, it's probably just going to roll off my back and I'm going to enjoy it. It's not a big deal to me. The only things I do find frustrating in regards to criticism about that is, I mean, first of all, actually, I think that they didn't have necessarily a lot of time to work on this. I don't want to say it was rushed, but it's not like something they've been planning for years. I think it was a relatively quick process, so I'm willing to cut them a little bit of slack, especially when it comes to the CG. It's kind of like comparing, movies and shows that have a long time to work on their CG and shows that have to put out stuff quicker and they don't have as much time to polish it. So most of it's going to roll off my back. They didn't have a lot of time. The only things that bother me or that I have thoughts on in reference to the criticism, and it's not even in a way that I'm really dwelling on it. I just thought it was worth bringing up. Is number one, it really annoys me, the Toku fans that will nitpick PR for their effects, but then like let Sentai and Rider off the hook and say it's part of the charm that Toku's supposed to look bad. Greatest con job of all time. Part of your charm is that you look bad. I'm just joking around, guys. But that always bothers me. But also, one thing in favor of it maybe looking a little more professional is I feel that this thing's going to bring in a lot more eyeballs than usual. Obviously, the hardcore fans are going to be watching it, but I think we're going to get a lot of casuals revisiting it, and I think there's a lot about it that shows that it is made with the fact in mind that there's going to be some older people watching it. It still looks very much like Cosmic Fury, Dino Fury in the vibe of it, but you know, using the word kill, just everything feels like they know there's going to be even more of an older audience than usual. So that's the thing. But I think that the casuals that are going to tune in are probably going to see the cheapo effects and be like, yeah, Power Rangers was always a cheapo show, this makes sense. I do think that there was a bit of a missed opportunity here to pour some extra effort into the effects. And imagine if they made it look like a real deal Netflix movie special with like, you know, more professional effects and sets. I think that could have been a cool precedent to set to show how good the Netflix series might look when we get the reboot. Not just in general for like a good show of like, hey, this is what we're capable of, but also for like the casual fans tuning in. I think it would be cool to show them like, hey, this could be something more than that cheapo show you remember. Instead of being like, hey, it's still that cheapo show that you always remembered. I'm not overly dwelling on it, but I think it's a missed opportunity because I think PR has a reputation problem, and they could have used this in a way to be like, oh man, I never knew PR could look and feel this good. You know, that sounded weird. I think that though the story being a little bit more mature with actual character and story to it is going to be a bonus, but I just thought I would bring that up because I did see some criticism about the look. But I'm overall still pretty excited for this. Despite it seeming like it was a quick process, everything looks pretty good. Like I said, Billy feels like Billy. Zach was kind of a standout in this. I'm excited to see more of Min. I actually kind of dig Robo Rita. Like the base costume is pretty basic, but the face doesn't look as creeper weird Machine Empire from the poster. It actually looks pretty good for what it is. She does mention and say, after all these years, I've got a new body, which is interesting context. I'm curious to see what this means, like what she's going to be, because obviously, you know, Rita was purified. You know, I'm curious if maybe when the wave of evil happened, or the wave of good happened, if maybe like the evil burned off of her and, you know, that evil is resurrected in this robot. Kind of like, that's my personal interpretation of Zed. You know, it's a little bit vague. Some people think he was plucked from time. Other people think they just resurrected him from a specific age. My personal interpretation, until someone tells me otherwise, is that when he was, you know, purified, the evil of him was killed, and the evil of him was resurrected without the good humanity in him. Sort of similar to when Mesogog and Mercer separated. And I wonder if something similar happens here, where the evil of Rita is resurrected into this bot. I hope they mention the Mystic Mother thing in this. I know it's a Mystic Force lore connection, but they did mention that Zed was purified in Dino Fury, and it would just seem weird not to mention it. There's all sorts of little odds and ends that I hope they mention in this in regards to little continuity and stuff that would be neat. I'm going to make a separate video for that. But yeah, overall, I'm excited still. You know, it doesn't look the best, but you know, for PR and for something, this did tug at my nostalgia strings, and I'm excited. And obviously, I will continue to bring you coverage on any updates, as well as the review when it comes out. But what did you guys think of our first trailer? Let me know in the comments as always. Until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell so you get notifications for my videos. Dawson Ryder, signing out.